Do you always feel like you take 2 steps forward and then take 3 steps back? Do you have experiences where you think, I finally worked this out, I finally got it, I see it, I know what's happening, I know what's happening, and then suddenly you act in a different way. Suddenly you find yourself in an experience that's the opposite of what your knowing was, what you remembered. Do you often say, when you're in a good space, you experience, I've finally waken up, I've finally woken up, I finally know, I've worked it out, and then everything falls apart? Or you've spotted a pattern, you've spotted a thing that appears in your life, and you can see the pattern, you know how it's appeared, and you know the actions you take, and you know what's caused it, and then suddenly it appears again, even though you've worked it out. So today we're going to talk about why that is. Why does it feel like we take 2 steps forward and then 3 steps back? This came to me the other day, and it's something that I've heard over and over and over again, and it's something that I've shared over and over and over again, but somehow it landed differently. 2 days ago, it landed differently. It just became clear. I was given a few examples to make it easy to understand, why do we have that experience of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back? Why do we have that experience of thinking we've got it all worked out and then everything falls apart? Why is it that it seems to be this continuous circling back? Different people, different faces, different places, but same themes. Why does that continue? Why does it cycle? Why does it circle? And so the way it came to me was, well, I was given an example, actually. A couple of examples, but the really good example is the law of buoyancy. So something floating in water. So if you can swim, and if there was a time in your life when I'm sure there are some babies are born in water and they just swim straight away, but in general, we learn to swim. We learn the way to keep ourselves buoyant in water. And so that law of buoyancy is no respecter of people, places, history. This was the example I was given as well. I always get like frustrated, and I tell my wife about it. It's like I get into these expanded states and I just feel I don't have any questions. There's no problems. There's no challenges. I don't want for anything. I don't desire anything. And then I can come from that into this space of wanting, desiring, fearing, impatience, anger, frustration, all of those. And the frustration was with me was, all of the years and all of the time meditating, all of the work, all of the books, all of the things that we do, all of the remembering that we have. Like there's this human idea of that builds up like some sort of CV or something. So if you spent a lot of time meditating, then there's this idea that somehow that should build up enough points for you or something to not have those experiences. And so the idea came is like natural laws don't have they don't give any credence to your history, because natural laws always work in the now. So the law of buoyancy. So let's say there was a time in your life where you weren't matching the law of buoyancy, and if you got into a swimming pool or into water, you would sink. And then through certain understandings, teachings, experience, you learned to match the law of buoyancy, and you were able to float in the water. So you're able to swim, or you're able to lay back in the water and just float. So you match the law of buoyancy. So let's say for 30 years, 40 years, you match the law of buoyancy. You swam every day. Then by let's say some accident happened, some event happened that however it happened, for some reason, you forgot how to match that law of buoyancy. and you get into the pool, you get into the water, the law of buoyancy doesn't say, oh, he's been a good buoyant boy for 40 years. We're going to keep him up. No. If you don't match the law of buoyancy, which isn't just a natural law in this dimension, you're going to sink. Doesn't matter if you've done it for 40 years. Natural law always happens in the now. So it doesn't matter if you've meditated for 40 years, if you get angry on 40 years in one day, the natural law, it only acts in the now. It acts in the present. It only knows now. It doesn't know past and future. It doesn't know what you've done. Doesn't know what you will do. It just is a natural law that we either align to or not. And so whenever we have these experiences, like we have awakening experiences, we have remembering experiences, we match a certain law, a certain frequency. We're in a buoyant mood, or we're in a loving space, our heart opens. And we can have that for 20 years. And we can have it for 2 seconds. And then 3 seconds later, we can not match that law of love, let's say. We could call it the natural law of love, the law of our nature. The second that we don't match that natural law, which is just we're opening to what is a natural tendency, that law acts in the now, and it acts unequivocally, and it doesn't care about your history. It doesn't care how holy man or a holy woman you have been. It can only act in the now. It can only act naturally. It can only be its natural self. So no matter what you have done in the last any time, 5 seconds or 50 years, it doesn't matter. It's, are we matching the natural laws? So like the law of gravity in this dimension, that is a binding law for the vast majority. But there are beings, and there are examples, quite rare, quite controversial, but that's because it's such a law, that there are beings, and there are we can look in technical terms, before flight, before the ability to use flight to negate that law of gravity. Everyone up until that point in this, what we call history, were bound by that law of gravity. So that law acts in the now, unless there is someone or something in a technical sense, in an airplane, a hang glider, an air balloon, whatever it was, or in a spiritual sense where people can literally expand their light body, and in the same way as a technological way, in a spiritual way, they can transcend that law. But that law will act continuously in the now, unless we are, like in the Hermetic philosophies, we're acting through a higher law. So there are laws above laws, and there's laws below laws, and depending on what state of consciousness we're in, this is why it feels like we take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. We can take 2 steps forward into a higher state of being, which is just a more expanded version of who we always are, which we always are already, but we actually see it by taking a step forward, by opening the heart, by becoming and remembering who we are. And it seems like we take 3 steps back is because we step out of that. We start watching the news, we start continuing old patterns, we start getting arrogant, we start falling into this idea that there's definitely, I got a lesson in arrogance recently, arrogance and greed, and the idea, I've got it worked out, I don't have any more questions, there's no the quest that the eye is on. The question is how this evolution expands. And so it seems like we repeat these patterns because these natural laws that govern whichever sphere of consciousness, whichever sphere of dimensional reality that we are currently in, the natural laws of that sphere of dimension will act impersonally, they will act impeccably, and they will act always, no matter what has gone before, no matter who you are, no matter who you think you are becoming, they will always act. And so the ascension of awareness is expanding ourselves to laws that transcend the laws in the current sphere of consciousness that we're in. So we can transcend the law of gravity. We currently, the majority of people do it through a technological means, but it can be done with an inner spiritual means. We can transcend the law of separation by going into the higher law of oneness. We're not separate from other people, we're not separate from the environment. We take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. Let's say we step 2 steps forward into a more embodied, a more unified, a more oneness consciousness. And then it seems like we take 3 steps back because we've fallen out of it. We fall out with someone. We forget our connection with Source, our connection with every being and everywhere, everything, everyone, everywhere, every how, every now. So it seems like we've taken a step back, but what has happened is we've just fallen out of sync of where we always are. We're always in that state of oneness. And these laws that govern, so like the law of gravity, the law of buoyancy, the law of oneness, the law of one, they are all different spheres of experience in dimensional reality. And the one that we are experiencing is dependent, like the buoyancy, whether we are matching that law of buoyancy or not. We sink or swim. Are we matching that law of oneness, or are we falling back into separation? We never actually move. In truth, we're always in the oneness that we are, but our experience in this dimension allows us the free will choice to forget what we already know and to experience ourselves as separate and to think that we need to get something, to think that we are lacking in some way. And so these cycling experiences are just reflecting to us whether we are matching, aligning with the natural laws that are inherent to all of dimensional experience or not. And it's not personal. And you don't build up any credits, and you don't have a CV. You have no reputation. There's no history. It's always impersonal. It's no respecter of person, place, conditions, or things. It's a natural law you match. And this is another one, like in spiritual circles and around abundance and money and like spiritual things as well. Like, so people say, why does quote evil people get rich? Why has all of the people that are controlling and patriarchal system and domination and control over and war, why do they have all the money? The law of abundance is impersonal. The law of abundance doesn't care if you're a quote good person or a quote bad person. The law of abundance is either you match it or you don't. Now, the caveat to that is if someone has gained great wealth and abundance through the means of harming, hurting, controlling, or manipulating others, that will be those ill-gotten gains will always come back to the intention that was put on it. But acquiring wealth in that way is a natural law. It's a law of abundance. It's a law of prosperity. And most of those people don't have the limiting beliefs that quote spiritual people have that stops them from matching this natural law of abundance, this law of prosperity. And again, these beings that have that ill-gotten gains, or they've matched that law, and they've used it in a means to control or manipulate, that it won't be lasting. If we match the law of abundance and prosperity with a heart of service, with a heart of giving, with a heart of generosity, with a heart of connection, then it will be a blessing unto ourselves and to all. But it's still, that law is not going to say someone matches this law, they've been a bad person, I'm not going to fulfill it. There's nothing like that. The law acts in the now, and it is impersonal. So why do we feel like we've taken 2 steps forward and 3 steps back? It's because we match the law or we don't match the law. That's always in the now. And there is no forward, there's no 2, there is no 3, there is no forward, there is no back. Why do we experience like we've got something and then suddenly we forgot it again? When we've got it, we're matching the law. when it seems like it's gone, we have just stepped out of the law again. It's not like we've lost something. It's not like we're doing something, quote, wrong. It just means we're not matching the law that we were matching before. We're not matching that vibrational frequency, that natural tendency, a natural who we are. We've just gotten distracted. We're focusing on something else. We've got arrogant, we've got complacent, or whatever it happens to be. If you look back, well, not really look back, look within more so, you'll see what is different from there to there. How am I acting differently, feeling differently, speaking differently? What are my thoughts? And we'll see that whenever we're in those steps forward, which give us relative experience, is also beneficial in this dimension. As long as we don't complain about it whenever we see that it seems like we've taken 3 steps back, we can see it as giving perspective, giving contrast. But when we allow ourselves to see clearly that these natural laws are impersonal, they act always in the now, they don't respect person, places, conditions, or things, they always act impersonally in the now, we know our experience will reflect whether we are matching those natural laws or not. And we always have the opportunity to step into higher laws, like in the Hermetic philosophies, which transcend the laws that are in this dimensional reality. We have the ability to step into the law of one and be the law. We are the law of one, but we can experience the law of one while we're appearing in the law of many, the law of separation. We can match the law of buoyancy, even though we've never swam in our life. If we match the law of buoyancy, we will float. We can match the law of prosperity and abundance. No matter if we've been a good person or a good little boy or a good little girl, it doesn't matter. If we match the law of abundance and prosperity, it will act. It acts without condition. It acts instantaneously in the now. If we match the law of gravity, it will act. We're all, again, vast majorities are acting, but there are ways in which we can transcend that, both technologically in this lower sense and spiritually in a higher sense, in an etheric sense. We can expand into our etheric body with that. The law of gravity does not act on our physical structure, and our physical structure becomes the light that it is. So our experience is always showing us whether we're matching these natural laws or not. We're not taking steps forward and steps back. We're matching the law or not. The law is impersonal, the law is always acting in the now, and the law is no respecter of persons, places, conditions, things, or history. Always acting in the now. So this is a little sharing on always taking 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, continuing cycles. I hope this has served you. Please put in the comments if it has any challenges, questions to this. Very welcome. And until next time, from my heart to yours, the divine in me sees, loves, and honors the divine in you. Namaste. We are